What would you do if the person you've loved for most of your life suddenly realized the most romantic part of your marriage was built on a lie? I'm 87 years old, and yesterday my wife discovered that every love letter she treasured for 6 decades was never written the way she believed. For 60 years she thought those words came straight from my heart, effortless and natural. The truth is harder, uglier, and more complicated than that. And I've been carrying it alone since I was a young man. I need to start at the beginning, because this didn't come from cruelty or manipulation. It came from fear. When we married, I loved her deeply, but I wasn't built the way romantic men are portrayed. I didn't know how to express tenderness with words. Silence was my language. Work was my comfort. Meanwhile, she bloomed around letters, poetry, gestures, sentences that wrapped around her heart and told her she was chosen, cherished, safe. I saw it early. I saw the disappointment in her eyes. The first time she waited for words I didn't know how to give. So I made a decision that felt small at the time and followed me for 60 years. I wrote the first letter like a performance. I copied phrases I had read, borrowed emotions I thought a husband should feel, described a version of myself who spoke fluently about love. When she read it, she cried. Not softly. She cried the way people cry when something finally fills a hollow place. That moment taught me something dangerous. I learned that my silence hurt her, but my written words healed her. Even if those words weren't entirely mine, the letters became a ritual. Birthdays, anniversaries, random Tuesdays. She kept them in drawers, boxes, envelopes tied with ribbon. She reread them during hard years, after arguments when life felt heavy. Every time she told me how much they meant, the lie grew heavier, but stopping felt impossible. What kind of man takes away something that gives his wife comfort? What kind of husband admits that the most romantic proof of his love was crafted, rehearsed, constructed? Over time, I convinced myself I was protecting her. That love was proven by staying, by providing, by never leaving. But the truth was simpler and more shameful. I was afraid she wouldn't love the quiet man I really was. I was afraid that without those letters, she would see the emptiness where eloquence should be, and fear, when you live with it long enough, becomes habit. Yesterday, at 87, that habit finally collapsed. And as I watched her face change, I realized I may have waited too long to tell the truth. And before this story goes any further, I want to pause here for a moment, because what I'm about to share next only makes sense if you truly understand what's at stake. If you've ever loved someone but felt you weren't enough as you were, if you've ever hidden part of yourself to keep a relationship alive, then this story is also about you. I want to know what you think. Do words matter more than actions in a marriage that lasts decades, or is love proven in quieter ways? Leave a comment and tell me honestly which one you believe carries more weight. Your perspective matters more than you realize. If this story is making you uncomfortable, that's not an accident. These are the kinds of truths we avoid talking about, even though they shape entire lives. If you think understanding stories like this helps us love better, forgive deeper, or see our partners more clearly, please leave a like. It helps this conversation reach people who need it. And if you want to hear the rest of this confession, including how this secret began and why I was so afraid to ever stop writing those letters, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what comes next. I was 27 when we got married, young enough to believe love would solve everything, old enough to already know my own limits. Back then, I wasn't cold, distant, or careless. I was simply a man raised in a house where feelings stayed buried. My father loved my mother, I'm sure of that, but I never once heard him say it out loud. Love, in my world, was showing up, fixing things, paying bills, staying. Words were unnecessary. Or so I believed. My wife was the opposite. She noticed everything. The way a sentence could change the air in a room. The way a few honest words could turn an ordinary day into something unforgettable. When we were dating, she wrote me notes, small ones at first, then longer letters. She told me how she felt, what she feared, what she dreamed about. I read them carefully, always longer than I should have because I didn't know how to answer them, not properly, not the way she deserved. The first real crack appeared early in our marriage. It wasn't a fight, it was worse, it was disappointment. She asked me once gently why I never wrote to her. Not accusing, not angry, just curious. I joked it off, said I wasn't good with words. She smiled, but her eyes gave her away. Something in her dimmed. That night, lying next to her, I understood something painful. She needed words the same way I needed silence, and neither of us knew how to cross that gap. That's when the idea formed. Not fully, not consciously. At first it felt like effort, like trying to learn a new language. I sat at the kitchen table late one night with a piece of paper and stared at it like it was judging me. I thought about what a loving husband should say. I thought about movies, books, things I'd overheard other men say. I didn't write what I felt. I wrote what I believed love was supposed to sound like. When she read that first letter, she didn't question it. She didn't analyze it. She held it to her chest like proof that she was loved in the way she'd always hoped. That reaction locked me into something I didn't yet understand, because from that moment on, the marriage had two versions of me. The man she lived with every day, steady and present, and the man who existed only on paper, eloquent and emotionally fearless. Over the decades, writing those letters became a ritual. Every week, every birthday, every anniversary, I sat at my desk with pen in hand, crafting words I hoped would comfort, delight, and reassure her. Each envelope held a performance, a version of love I thought she needed, not always the version I truly felt. Some nights I struggled for hours, unsure if a single phrase would feel authentic enough. It became both a lifeline and a prison, a way to stay, close without ever showing the parts of me I feared she wouldn't understand. I remember the subtle shift that came over me as the years passed. The letters weren't just for her anymore. They were for me too. I told myself they were a bridge, keeping us connected when life got hard, when children grew up and left, when work and illness and the monotony of routine threatened to separate us. But with every carefully constructed line, the fear grew. What if she discovered the truth? What if all those years of devotion she believed in were built on something that wasn't completely real? Yet stopping felt impossible. Each letter reinforced the illusion of closeness. She read them, cried, smiled, and I basked in the warmth of her response, pretending that the words came naturally. I was living two parallel lives, one in her eyes, the devoted husband, and one in reality, the man who couldn't fully express the love he felt in his own way. The fear of losing her love was greater than the fear of being discovered. And so the letters continued, 60 years of them, each one a careful balance of truth, embellishment, and silent longing. Sometimes I wondered if the letters had replaced me in some ways, if she loved the words more than she loved the man behind them, and in quiet moments I felt the weight of every secret, every carefully chosen phrase, every unsaid thought. That weight carried me through late nights, long travels, health scares, and the inevitable disappointments that life brings. It was exhausting and necessary all at once. The letters became a rhythm of marriage, a hidden pulse that neither of us fully recognized as a lie because we both believed in what they represented, enduring love, even if constructed. And yesterday, that rhythm broke. Every carefully maintained secret, every quiet reassurance collapsed in an instant when she found the letters. Decades of devotion suddenly reframed as deception. I watched her face shift, and for the first time, in 60 years, I saw the fear mirrored in her eyes that had been in mine all along. Even as the truth came crashing down, the reality beneath the letters could not be denied. Every day I had shown up for her, even when tired, sick, or distracted. Every act of care, every small sacrifice, every moment I spent making her life easier, those were real. The letters were only words, but my presence, my devotion, the constancy of my love over decades was authentic. And that's where the contradiction lived. The letters were false in expression, yet the love they symbolized was undeniable. She confronted me slowly, Not in anger at first, but in silence that screamed louder than any words could. And I realized something terrifying. I had spent 60 years afraid that my real self was not enough, yet it had always been enough. The love that mattered, the one that sustained our marriage through illness, children, losses, and the quiet days that passed unnoticed, was never in the letters. It was in the daily unseen acts, in the way I remembered her favorite chair by the window, how I knew when she needed tea or a moment alone, how I listened without judgment when she spoke of her fears. That love had never been fake. Yet knowing this did little to erase the weight of discovery. The letters had become her symbol of romance, the tangible proof of devotion she had held onto, and now that proof had been questioned. I watched her struggle, reading through years of my hand, letters she had treasured, trying to reconcile the man she thought I was with the man she suddenly saw. And I understood, with crushing clarity, that the journey to forgiveness would be long, not because the love wasn't real, but because perception and expectation had been rewritten overnight. Even so, in those long hours of silence and careful examination, there were moments of recognition. She remembered the nights I held her through grief, the way I supported her family when she couldn't, the quiet gestures that had built the foundation of 60 years together. And in her eyes, for a brief flash, I saw understanding, the acknowledgement that while the letters were crafted, the life we had built, the bond we had nurtured, was genuine. That paradox, painful and beautiful, was the essence of our love, flawed, human, yet enduring. It was in this fragile, suspended moment that both fear and hope coexisted. We were at the edge of something new, a test of whether the marriage could survive the truth, and, in that suspended uncertainty, I realized love is not only what you say, but what you live day after day, moment by moment. It happened in the most ordinary way, which somehow made it worse. There was no confrontation, no dramatic argument, no raised voices. She was cleaning out the old cedar chest in the guest room, the one we hadn't opened in years, the one that smelled like time itself. Inside were the letters, all of them, bundled, dated, organized more carefully than I ever realized. 60 years of words I thought were safely buried in routine. She came into the living room holding a stack of envelopes and asked me a question that stopped my heart. Not why I wrote them, not what they meant. She asked how I had managed to keep my handwriting so consistent when in my old notebooks my writing looked completely different. Her voice wasn't accusing, it was confused, curious. That was the moment I knew there was no graceful way out. I tried to explain slowly, carefully, choosing words the way I always had, but this time there was nowhere to hide behind them. I told her the truth, that the letters weren't spontaneous, that many of the phrases came from books, from observations, from what I believed a loving husband should sound like. I watched her face as understanding settled in, first disbelief, then hurt, then something quieter and far more dangerous, doubt. She sat down without saying anything and started opening envelopes at random, rereading them with new eyes. I could almost see the years rearranging themselves in her mind. Every time she had leaned on those words during a hard season, every night she believed I was emotionally braver than I truly was. And I realized this wasn't just about the letters. It was about trust, about identity, about who she thought she had married. What terrified me most wasn't anger. It was the silence, the possibility that she might look at our entire life together and feel like she had loved a stranger. That fear sat heavy between us as the afternoon faded into evening. And for the first time since our wedding day, I didn't know if love alone would be enough to keep us together. That night, neither of us slept. Not because we were arguing, but because we were thinking. 60 years doesn't unravel loudly. It unravels quietly inside your head, while you stare at the ceiling and replay moments you thought were settled forever. She finally spoke sometime after midnight, not to accuse me, but to ask something far more painful. If the letters weren't fully real, then which parts of our life were? I didn't have a clean answer. I told her the truth as plainly as I could, without dressing it up this time. I told her I was afraid from the beginning, afraid of disappointing her, afraid of being emotionally inadequate, afraid that the man I was would never be enough for the woman she was. The letters weren't written to deceive her, I said. They were written to keep her, to give her what I couldn't say out loud. And even as I said it, I knew how thin that explanation sounded after 6 decades. Her anger came in waves, not explosions. She talked about the years she leaned on those words, the nights she reread them when she felt unseen, the way they shaped how she understood love. She wasn't just grieving a lie, she was grieving a version of me she thought she knew. At the same time, there were moments when her voice softened, when she acknowledged the life we built. The sacrifices, the loyalty, the fact that I never left, never betrayed her in the ways people usually betray each other. That's when the hardest truth surfaced for both of us. Love isn't a single thing. It's not just honesty, and it's not just intention. It's a collision of both. She had been loved deeply, but not transparently. I had been devoted completely, but not bravely. And now, at the end of our lives, we were being forced to decide whether forgiveness meant erasing the past or learning how to hold it differently. We sat there, 2 old people with trembling hands and shared memories, realizing that the weight of a lifetime doesn't disappear just because the truth finally shows up. And in that fragile space between anger and forgiveness, neither of us knew what tomorrow would look like. If you stayed with me until this moment, thank you. That tells me this story touched something real inside you. If it did, I want you to do one simple thing right now. Leave a comment and write. Truth lasts if you believe honesty, even when it comes late, still matters in love. Or write love is action if you believe what we do over a lifetime speaks louder than words ever could. I read every single comment, and I want to know where you stand. If this story made you reflect on your own marriage, your own secrets, or the things you've never said out loud, please leave a like. It helps this message reach people who may be quietly carrying something similar. And if you want to hear more real confessional stories about love, marriage, regret, forgiveness, and the truths we face at the end of life, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The next video is already on your screen, and it continues this journey into the things we hide, the things we fear, and the things we finally understand when time is running out. Click it now, and I'll see you there.